now to discuss Michael Mann. He's the author of Our Fragile Moment, How Lessons from Earth's Past Can Help Us Survive the Climate Crisis, and also Presidential Distinguished Professor of Earth and Science at the University of Pennsylvania. It's great to have you with me today. You know, I was struck by what that activist Susan Glickman told my colleague Bill Weir, saying you can't adapt your way out of this. So if we can't adapt our way out of this, what do we do?
Yeah, thanks, Erica. It's good to be with you, and it's good to hear from my friend Bill Weir, who did a really good job sort of in describing, the tragedies that we are seeing unfold. And, there's a danger of sort of framing this in a binary way. Either we can or can't deal with it. It's really a matter of minimizing the additional warming and the additional intensification and damage that these storms cause while adapting to the new normal that we're faced with. So there's a certain amount of warming that's already baked in. We are going to continue to see the sorts of storms that we have witnessed, just in the past couple weeks. This is, if you like, in the best case scenario, the new normal. And we can take measures to adapt to that. I say the best case scenario because it will be worse than a new normal if we continue to burn fossil fuels and elevate carbon pollution in the atmosphere. The planet will continue to warm up, the oceans will get warmer, and they will drive more intense hurricanes that produce greater amounts of flooding.
To that point, we look at the storm. It's doubled in size since yesterday. Helene set storm surge records 2 weeks ago. They're expected to be broken by Milton, in the coming hours. There was a warning early on that the 2024 hurricane season was going to be a big one. Is this what you imagined it would look like?
It is. We were sort of lulled into complacency. It was a pretty quiet August, but when we looked, prior to the hurricane season at the various factors at play, we're coming out of an El Nino event, going into the opposite state, so-called La Nina, where you tend to see more hurricanes, more tropical storms. The tropical Atlantic is at record levels of warmth. And so you put those two things together, many of us predicted a very active season. We didn't see such an active August, and that lulled a lot of people into complacency. What we're seeing now is precisely what we expected to see. Unfortunately, we are, witnessing the effect of human-caused warming when it comes to the damage by these storms. And one other thing, as you alluded to, this storm intensified very quickly. We call this rapid intensification. It set a record for going from a tropical depression to a Category 5 hurricane in less than 48 hours. We've never seen that happen before in the Atlantic. And that means it's even harder to plan. We don't know what's coming. We don't have enough advance notice to really take the measures that are necessary to minimize the impacts of people in the storm's way. And unfortunately, we're seeing that play out right now.
What is it then, as you look at this, given how rapidly it increased in strength, what are you watching of this storm over the next 10 to 12 hours?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of good news. The storm was sort of fighting off what we call wind shear, winds in different directions or different speeds at different levels in the atmosphere that interferes with the sort of nice pattern that the hurricane is trying to form. And so it tends to weaken hurricanes. It prevented this thing from strengthening back into a 180, 185 mile per hour monster. So it weakened a bit. That probably changed its trajectory a little bit. And so rather than, that worst case scenario where we were seeing it maybe go just north of Tampa Bay, and that would lead to unbelievable levels of coastal flooding in the entire Tampa Bay region, it's tracked a little farther south. That's good for Tampa Bay, but there's a large swath of the west coast of Florida that is going to be facing very dangerous storm surges and all that inland rainfall that combines with what we call compound flooding, where you've got the rain coming down, you've got the storm surge coming in. And so there is great peril for those people who remain in the storm's path, and people need to obviously evacuate to the extent that they still can.
Yeah, and the fact that this storm is going to retain so much strength as it moves across the state of Florida out into the Atlantic. I'm struck earlier this year, Ron DeSantis signed a law restructuring Florida's energy policy. So climate change, addressing planet warming pollution, no longer listed as priorities, and even erased some references to climate change from state law. There's a difference between language, right, and the reality of what things are, what's actually happening. Making those changes doesn't change the reality of climate change or what the state of Florida and much of the country is facing. Does it change the way that this state is responding and what that means for residents?
Well, I think it is. Ron DeSantis basically denies human-caused climate change, and he's worked to have it removed from school curricula so that so school children don't learn about the aggravating impact that climate change is having on them, which to me is so deeply unethical and immoral because they're the ones who are going to really bear the brunt of the consequences of our carbon pollution today. Our children and grandchildren will see the worst consequences of warming, and it's just immoral to not educate them about the increased threat, the increased risk that they face. And we're seeing that risk play out here in real time, unfortunately, now this season for Florida, for the southeastern U.S., where there was immense amounts of flooding. And let me put this in a slightly broader political context, if I can, because there's also a larger agenda here. The Republican agenda, unfortunately, Donald Trump and the Republican agenda seems to be embodied in so-called Project 2025. One of the things that it will do is literally get rid of NOAA, the very government agency that's tasked with collecting the data, that is tasked with sending hurricane hunters out into those storms so they can make the measurements that we feed into our models that help us better predict the trajectories and the intensification rates of those storms. Trump and the GOP want to get rid of that. And so people should think about that during this election season as they think about whom they're going to vote for this fall.
We will continue to follow this storm and its impact. Michael Mann, good to have you with us today. Thank you.
You too, Erica. Thanks.